I should have known something was wrong when Julian Hale insisted I wear the sapphire pendant, not the simple diamond I preferred, but the ornate piece he'd bought 6 months ago and left hanging on my vanity with a note that read, "Wear this tonight, Anya." At 30, I'd learned to pick my battles. A piece of jewelry wasn't worth the conflict, especially not tonight. The St. Regis Ballroom was hosting the annual charity auction, all crystal, gilt, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. My heels clicked across the polished marble as the host greeted me with a professional smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Miss Petrova, your party is already seated." Your party, not your fiancé. The phrasing should have been my second warning. I followed him through the dining room, acutely aware of the eyes that tracked my movement. The auction attracted Manhattan's elite, 200 people easily, all dressed in designer labels. Julian Hale sat at a table near the center of the room, prime real estate for visibility. But he wasn't alone. A sleek-haired lawyer from his firm, Mr. Davies, occupied the chair that should have been mine. I stopped 3 feet from the table, my own empty purse suddenly feeling impossibly light and heavy. Julian stood, his expression carefully neutral. "Anya, thank you for coming." Like I was a business associate, not the woman he'd promised to marry. "Julian, what is this?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about our future. As you know, the Hale-Petrova joint account we set up transferred all capital to my control yesterday." The words landed like a physical blow. Around us, conversations had begun to quiet. "I'm ending the engagement, yes. And concerning the funds," Julian paused, a cruel smile touching his lips, "I think it's best we make a clean break. You've been served. You are now fully responsible for the $500,000 in outstanding Hale Corporation acquisition debt we took out 2 months ago. You are, quite publicly, bankrupt." I stood there, paralyzed, unable to deny the legal truth, the entire room seeming to tilt. Just as the lawyer stepped forward with papers, a low, smooth voice cut through the stunned silence. "That figure is surprisingly small for such a large performance." The sound belonged to Dante Moretti. He sat alone at a corner table, a figure of formidable power, sipping a glass of dark wine, having watched the entire ordeal. I felt his presence like a physical force. He hadn't just been observing my humiliation, he was judging it. The whispers started immediately. Julian's smile widened, feeding off the shock rippling through the ballroom. He wasn't done with his performance yet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian raised his voice, ensuring every ear caught his words, "I apologize for the disruption, but I believe in transparency. Miss Petrova and I entered a business arrangement, an engagement, based on mutual trust. Unfortunately, she's proven herself financially irresponsible." He gestured to Mr. Davies, who produced a folder thick with documents. "The debt she's responsible for stems from acquisitions she personally approved, investments she encouraged. I tried to help her, truly, but I can't marry someone who'd bankrupt us both." The lies were so smooth, so perfectly calculated. I'd signed papers, yes, but only because Julian had assured me they were standard prenuptial documents. I'd trusted him with everything, my savings, my credit, my future. And he'd systematically dismantled it all while I believed we were building a life together. "You planned this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "From the beginning?" "I planned for every contingency," Julian corrected. "You were supposed to be an asset, Anya. Instead, you became a liability." He turned to the crowd, playing to them like a politician. "Let this be a lesson about due diligence in all relationships." Laughter. Actual laughter from some corners of the room. Others looked away, embarrassed but unwilling to intervene. I was alone, in a sea of designer gowns and expensive suits, drowning in public disgrace, while 200 people watched. The sapphire pendant suddenly felt like a noose around my neck. He'd made me wear it so I'd look the part. The gold digger draped in jewelry she couldn't afford, the social climber who'd overreached. Every detail had been weaponized against me. Mr. Davies stepped forward, offering me the papers with a sympathetic expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Petrova, if you'll sign these acknowledgments, she won't be signing anything." The voice came from the shadows near the bar, cultured and cold. Every head turned toward the speaker, and the room's energy shifted from gleeful scandal to something far more dangerous. Dante Moretti rose from his corner table with the fluid grace of a predator, and Julian's confident smile faltered.
I'd heard of Dante Moretti the way everyone in Manhattan had. Whispers and warnings, carefully omitted names in newspaper articles. The kind of power that didn't need to announce itself. He owned half of Tribeca, they said. His restaurants were fronts, his construction companies money laundering operations, his legitimate businesses just respectable enough to keep federal investigators at bay. But the man walking toward us didn't look like a movie villain. He looked like old money and new danger wrapped in a perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp cheekbones and a jawline that suggested Mediterranean heritage. But it was his eyes that held me, dark, calculating, and entirely focused on Julian. "Mr. Moretti," he stammered, "this is a private matter." "You made it public." Dante's accent was subtle, Italian around the edges of perfect English. He stopped 5 feet away, close enough to dominate the space without crowding it. "You destroyed a woman's financial future in front of 200 witnesses for entertainment. That's not private. That's theater." His gaze swept the room, and several people actually stepped back. Poor theater at that. Julian tried to recover his composure. "With all due respect, sir, this doesn't concern you." "No?" He pulled out his phone, made a brief call in rapid Italian, then pocketed it again. "Done. Miss Petrova's debt has been cleared. $500,000 transferred from one of my accounts to Hale Corporation, with explicit instructions that you, personally, will never touch a cent of it. The debt is paid, the contract void, and your little performance is over." Julian's face had gone pale. "You can't just— that's not how this works." "That's exactly how this works when you're dealing with me." Dante finally looked at me directly, and the intensity of his gaze made my breath catch. "Miss Petrova, Anya." He said my name like he'd been holding it in his mouth, testing its weight. "I don't know you, but I know men like him. They take and take until there's nothing left, then walk away laughing while their victims pick up the pieces. He reached into his jacket pocket. Several people tensed, hands moving toward phones, and withdrew a small, black, velvet box. Inside was a ring, platinum band, blood-red ruby surrounded by diamonds, the kind of jewelry that cost more than most people's cars. "This is not a gift," Dante said, his voice pitched for my ears alone, even though the entire room strained to listen. "You wear my ring, and you leave here under my protection, and Julian Hale never touches your life again. My reputation becomes your shield, my resources your foundation." My hand trembled as I stared at the ruby. It wasn't a proposal. It was a transaction, a business arrangement with a man whose business was power and violence, and the kind of influence that made prosecutors look the other way. Everything I'd been taught said to refuse, to walk away, to handle my problems independently. But Julian had just proven that independence was an illusion. He dismantled my life with paperwork and lawyers and a smile, and no one had stopped him. No one, except the dangerous man offering me a ring that looked like frozen blood. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Your defiance." Dante's answer surprised me. "I've been watching you tonight, Miss Petrova. From the moment you walked in wearing jewelry you didn't choose, forcing a smile that didn't reach your eyes. And when he destroyed you in front of these vultures, you didn't cry. You didn't beg. You stood there and took his cruelty with your spine straight and your head high." Something flickered in his dark eyes. "That interests me far more than your gratitude." Julian found his voice. "Anya, you can't be serious. He's a criminal, a thug with money." "And you're a parasite with credentials," Dante interrupted without looking at him. "At least I'm honest about what I am." He extended the ring toward me. "So what will it be, Anya Petrova? Freedom or pride?" I thought about my empty apartment, the consulting career Julian had convinced me to abandon, the friends who'd slowly disappeared when I chose him over them. I thought about the woman I'd been before Julian, ambitious, sharp, unafraid, and the diminished version I'd become. Always checking his reactions, always second-guessing myself. Dante Moretti was offering me a chance to rebuild. The price was unknown, the terms dangerous, but at least he'd been honest about the transaction. I took the ring. The weight of it on my finger felt like a shackle and a shield. The ruby caught the light, throwing red shadows across my hand. Around us, the whispers intensified. Shock, scandal, speculation. I just accepted a ring from the most dangerous man in Manhattan, traded one powerful man for another. But Dante's slight smile suggested he understood the distinction I was making. This wasn't submission. This was survival. "Good choice," he murmured, then turned to Julian with an expression that made several people actually step back. "As for you, Mr. Hale, let me be very clear. Anya Petrova is now under my protection. That means you don't contact her, don't approach her, don't speak her name in public. If I hear you've caused her even a moment's discomfort, I will take it personally. And when I take things personally, people tend to relocate permanently." Julian opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Mr. Davis had already gathered his papers and was edging toward the exit. Smart man. Dante offered me his arm. "Shall we?" I took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath expensive fabric. As we walked toward the exit, the crowd parted like water, no one willing to stand in Dante Moretti's path. Behind us, I heard Julian's voice, desperate now. "Anya, please, you're making a mistake!" I didn't look back.
The car waiting outside was a black Mercedes with tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screamed power and privacy. Dante held the door open for me, then settled beside me as his driver pulled smoothly into Manhattan traffic. "We need to establish some ground rules," I said, breaking the silence. "I accepted your ring, but that doesn't make me your property." "No," Dante agreed. "It makes you my responsibility. There's a difference." He poured 2 glasses of scotch from the car's bar, offered me one. "My penthouse has an east wing that will be yours. Bedroom, bathroom, office space, private, locked, entirely your domain. I have an apartment, which Julian knows the address to, along with your doorman, your building security schedule, and probably your alarm code." Dante's tone was matter-of-fact. "You'll stay with me until we've ensured he understands the consequences of breaking our agreement. After that, if you want your own place, we'll arrange it." "And the debt? You said it's cleared, but you don't trust that it's free." Dante smiled slightly. "Smart. Here's what I propose. You work it off. I have several legitimate businesses: construction, restaurants, property management. You have a business degree from Columbia, 3 years of consulting experience that Julian convinced you to abandon. Put those skills to use. Provide value, maintain your dignity, and when you've earned back the $500,000 through work, the contract ends." I studied him over the rim of my glass. "Why would you do this? You don't know me." "I know men like Julian," Dante said quietly. "I know what they do to strong women, how they isolate them, diminish them, convince them they're worth less than they are. My mother, let's just say I have personal reasons for disliking men who destroy women for sport." The car pulled up to a building in Tribeca, modern glass and steel rising 40 stories. The lobby was all polished marble and subtle security, cameras, guards, access-controlled elevators. Dante's keycard opened an elevator that required both the card and a fingerprint scan. And when the doors opened, they opened directly into his penthouse. The space was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson, minimalist furniture in shades of black and gray, art that was probably worth more than my former apartment. But it was the details that caught my attention. The books lining one wall, the espresso machine in the kitchen, the classical music playing softly in the background. This wasn't a showpiece. Someone actually lived here. "East Wing," Dante gestured. "Everything's been prepared. My housekeeper, Maria, stocked the basics. But if you need anything else, tell her directly. She's trustworthy." I walked into what was now my space. The bedroom alone was larger than my entire apartment, with its own sitting area and a bathroom that resembled a luxury spa. Someone had already hung fresh towels, left toiletries, placed fresh flowers on the nightstand. "This is too much," I said. "This is the minimum." Dante appeared in the doorway, keeping a respectful distance. "You're wearing my ring, Anya. That means the world sees you as mine, which means you need to look the part, live the part, become untouchable. It's armor, not indulgence. And what do you get out of this, really?" He met my eyes, his expression unreadable. "Honestly, I haven't decided yet. Maybe I get the satisfaction of ruining Julian Hale's narrative. Maybe I get a talented consultant who will improve my profit margins. Or maybe," he paused, "maybe I just wanted to see if you would be brave enough to accept." "That's not an answer." "No," Dante agreed. "But it's the truth."
3 days later, I sat in Dante's home office reviewing financial documents for Castellano Construction, one of his legitimate businesses. The contracts were surprisingly clean: union labor, proper permits, ethical sourcing of materials. Not what I'd expected from a man with Dante's reputation. But the numbers didn't add up. "You're overpaying for materials," I said when Dante entered, coffee in hand. He'd developed a habit of bringing me espresso exactly how I liked it, strong, no sugar, without me ever asking. You're overpaying for materials. Either your supplier is taking advantage or someone in your supply chain is skimming. Based on these quarterly reports, I'd estimate you're losing $80,000 per quarter, possibly more. Dante settled into the chair across from me, his gaze sharp. How would you fix it? Audit the entire supply chain. Interview site managers individually, not as a group. Someone knows where the money's going, and they'll talk if they feel safe rather than accused. I handed him the folder. Unless you already know and you're testing me. Both, Dante admitted, a slight smile touching his lips. I suspected the overpayment, but wanted to see if you'd catch it. The test was whether you'd tell me or try to handle it quietly yourself. Why would I handle it quietly? Some people in your position would try to leverage information for independence. Others would stay silent to avoid seeming critical. He leaned forward. You did neither. You identified the problem and presented a solution. That's useful. Before I could respond, his phone rang. The conversation was entirely in Italian, but I didn't need translation to understand the tone. Cold, threatening, absolute. When Dante hung up, his expression had gone dark. Problem? I asked. Someone tried to extort money from one of my restaurants. Claimed he'd go to the health department with fabricated violations unless we paid him $50,000. Dante's voice was flat. He won't try again. What did you do? Made it clear that his family's safety depends on his silence and immediate departure from New York. He'll be in Chicago by tomorrow morning, with enough money to start over, but not enough to feel comfortable. Dante met my eyes. That shocks you. Should it? Most people like to pretend the world is civilized, that problems solve themselves through proper channels and legal processes. He stood, moving to the window. But proper channels take months, cost fortunes, and often fail. Meanwhile, the extortionist keeps threatening, keeps taking. I solved the problem in one phone call. Through fear, through clarity. Dante turned back to me. He knew exactly what would happen if he continued. He chose to accept my terms. That's not violence, Anya. That's consequences. I should have been afraid. Instead, I found myself understanding the logic, seeing the efficiency in his ruthlessness. And if he'd refused, then I would have ensured his fabricated violations became his real ones. His business permits suddenly faced delays, and his suppliers found better clients. I don't hurt people, Anya. I make their lives so complicated that they choose to leave. He paused. Unless they hurt someone I'm protecting. Then I hurt them back. The way he said it, calm, factual, made it clear he wasn't exaggerating. If you believe in protecting people instead of destroying them, hit that subscribe button. People like Julian won't. And you need to hear what happened when he came back.
The call came 2 weeks into my stay with Dante. I was working late in my office, analyzing profit margins for his restaurant group, when my personal phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Anya. Julian's voice made my stomach clench. We need to talk. No, we don't. Lose this number. Please, just listen. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. What I did at the gala, I was angry, hurt. But I love you, Anya. We can fix this. I'll even forgive the debt. Transfer money back to your accounts. Just come home. The debt is paid. I have nothing to discuss with you. You're living with a criminal. Julian's smooth facade cracked.
That ring on your finger, do you even know what it means? You're his possession now, Anya. Is that really better than what we had? What we had was you systematically destroying my finances while pretending to love me. At least Dante is honest about his terms. I'll come get you. Tomorrow. We'll sit down, have coffee, talk this through like adults. I hung up. Then I walked out of my office to find Dante in the main living area, reading a book with a glass of wine beside him. He looked up when I entered, and something in my expression made him set the book aside. Julian called. Dante's eyes went cold. What did he say? I told him. Every word, every manipulation attempt, every veiled threat. By the time I finished, Dante had his phone out and was making a call. Find out how Julian Hale got Anya's personal number, then find out where he is right now. A pause. No, I'll handle it myself. Just get me the address. He hung up and looked at me. Get your coat. Dante, he threatened you. That violates our agreement. I'm going to make sure he understands the consequences. His voice was gentle, but underneath it was steel. You can come with me or stay here. Your choice. But this happens tonight. I should have stayed. Instead, I grabbed my coat. We drove to the Upper East Side, to a building I recognized, Julian's apartment. Dante's security had given him the address, the doorman schedule, even Julian's current location within the building. The efficiency was frightening. Dante didn't knock. He had someone open the door, picked the lock maybe, or bribed the super. We walked in to find Julian in his living room, wineglass in hand, looking shocked and then terrified. Mr. Moretti, I can explain. No need. Settle into Julian's expensive leather chair like he owned it. Let me explain instead. When I told you to stay away from Anya, that wasn't a suggestion, that was a boundary. You crossed it. So now we establish new consequences. I just wanted to talk to her. You wanted to manipulate her, to convince her you're the safer option despite you being the one who bankrupted her. Dante's voice was conversational, which somehow made it more menacing. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call your managing partner and request a transfer to your firm's London office. Fortunately, they have an opening that just became available.
Julian's face went pale. I can't just leave. You can, and you will. Because I've spent the past 2 weeks having my people examine your entire career, Julian. And what they found is fascinating. Dante pulled out his phone, scrolled through something. 3 instances of insider trading, 2 cases of client fund misappropriation, 1 fairly creative securities fraud, all technically legal but ethically questionable, and all documented in ways that would interest the SEC if someone were to anonymously submit them. That's privileged information. Not if you commit fraud, it isn't. And I have a federal prosecutor who owes me several large favors. Dante leaned forward. So here's your choice. You leave New York. You never contact Anya again. You don't speak her name, don't ask about her, don't even think about her. And in exchange, I keep all this evidence private. Your career continues, your reputation stays intact, and you get to pretend you're a good man who made a clean break. And if I refuse, then I destroy you. Dante said it simply, like he was discussing the weather. Not just your career, everything. Your reputation, your family's business relationships, your future opportunities. I'll make you untouchable in every legal market in the country, and I'll do it so thoroughly that you'll spend the rest of your life wondering how I managed it.
I watched Julian's face cycle through emotions. Anger, fear, calculation. He looked at me, desperate now. Anya, please! You can't let him do this! I love you! You don't love anyone but yourself. And even if Dante weren't here, my answer would be the same. We're done, Julian. Accept it. Dante stood. You have 48 hours to accept the transfer. After that, I start making phone calls. Choose wisely. We left Julian sitting in his apartment, broken and furious. In the car, I turned to Dante. Thank you. For threatening him? For letting me see it? For not handling it behind my back and expecting me to trust that you'd protected me? I met his eyes. That matters. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Surprise, maybe? Or recognition? You're not like the others. What others? People who want protection but not responsibility. Who want the benefits of my power without acknowledging what it costs. He reached out, caught my hand. You see exactly what I am, Anya, and you're still here. Because you see exactly what I am, too, and you haven't tried to change it.
Julian left for London. The transfer was announced internally at his firm 3 days later, framed as a prestigious opportunity. No one questioned it, and I didn't ask how Dante had made it happen so quickly. Instead, I focused on work. The construction audit revealed exactly what I'd suspected. A supply manager skimming money through a network of shell companies. I documented everything, presented the evidence to Dante, and watched as he handled it with the same cold efficiency he'd shown with Julian. The manager was given a choice: return the money and relocate, or face criminal charges. He chose relocation. You're good at this, Dante said one evening, reviewing my reorganization plans for his restaurant holdings. 3 locations I was ready to close are now profitable. They just needed better management. The concepts were sound, the locations excellent. The previous managers were coasting. I highlighted a section of my report. But this one, the place in Brooklyn, has deeper problems. The neighborhood's changing, the competition increased. Might be time to sell while the real estate value is still high. Dante studied the analysis, then looked at me with something like respect. You're telling me to cut my losses. I'm telling you to be strategic. Sometimes winning means knowing when to walk away. Is that advice for business or personal? The question hung between us. Over the past month, something had shifted in our carefully maintained boundaries. The coffee that appeared at my desk each morning. The way Dante asked my opinion on decisions that had nothing to do with paying off debt. The evening I'd found him reading in the living room at 2 a.m. and joined him, both of us working in comfortable silence until dawn. Personal situations are more complicated, I said carefully. Are they? Dante set down the report. You've paid off the debt, Anya. Twice over, actually, if we calculate the value you've added to my businesses. You're free to leave anytime. My heart stuttered. Are you asking me to leave? I'm telling you that you can. That the contract is fulfilled, the terms met. He leaned back, watching me with those dark, calculating eyes. But I'm also telling you that I don't want you to go. Why? Because somewhere between paying your debt and watching you rebuild 3 failing restaurants, I forgot this was supposed to be a transaction. Dante's voice dropped lower. I don't do this, Anya. I don't let people in. My world is dangerous, my choices questionable, my methods exactly as ruthless as you've seen. But you're already here, and the thought of you leaving makes me want to burn down
everything I've built just to have an excuse to keep you. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt something inside me unlock. Some carefully guarded part of my heart I'd kept sealed since Julian's betrayal. That's possibly the most terrifying romantic confession I've ever heard. I'm a terrifying man. Dante's mouth curved slightly. But I'm an honest one. I want you to stay, Anya. Not as someone paying off debt or hiding under my protection. Stay as my partner in business, and he paused, the first time I'd ever seen him uncertain. In everything else, you're asking me to choose you. Freely. Yes. I stood, crossed to where he sat, and looked down at him. This dangerous, powerful man who'd saved me from ruin and never once made me feel weak for needing saving. Who gave me work instead of charity, respect instead of pity, honesty instead of manipulation. I'm staying, I said, not because of the ring or the protection or the debt. I'm staying because you see me as an equal, Dante. Because you gave me back my power instead of taking it. Because somewhere between paying off my debt and watching you threaten my ex-fiancé, I realized I've never felt safer than I do in your dangerous world. Dante pulled me down into his lap, his hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. You're sure? Because once you're mine, truly mine, I don't let go. Neither do I. He kissed me then, and it felt like falling and flying at the same time, like every risk I'd taken since accepting his ring had led to this moment. When we finally pulled apart, Dante was smiling, rare and real, and entirely for me. I need to take you somewhere tomorrow night. Will you trust me? Always.
Dante brought me back to the St. Regis. Same ballroom, same crystal chandeliers, same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. But this time, the space was empty, except for a table set for two near the windows, candles already lit despite the early evening hour. "Why here?" I asked as Dante pulled out my chair. "Because this is where Julian tried to destroy you, where he made you feel small and helpless in front of everyone who mattered." Dante sat across from me, his expression serious. I wanted to replace that memory with something better. Dinner was simple, perfect. Pasta, I recognized from his favorite Italian restaurant, wine that probably cost more than my former monthly rent. But halfway through the meal, Dante set down his fork and reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a ring box, different from the first one, smaller, simpler. The ruby I gave you that night was meant to make a statement. It was theater, protection, a message to everyone watching that you were under my power. But this, he stood, moved around the table, and dropped to one knee beside my chair. This is real. My breath caught. Anya Petrova, I don't do this. I don't kneel for anyone, don't offer pieces of myself that can be used as weapons. But you've seen every dark corner of what I am, and you've stayed anyway. You've challenged me, respected me, trusted me with your vulnerability even when every logical reason said not to. He took my hand, the ruby ring still on my finger. I'm asking you to marry me. Not because of a debt, or a contract, or protection. Marry me because I love you with a violence that terrifies me. Because I want to spend the rest of my life earning your trust. Because the thought of a future without you in it is unbearable. Comment love over fear if you're Team Anya. The manipulation can't win. Now watch what happens when she accepts what she truly deserves. Tears blurred my vision. That's still a terrifying romantic confession. I'm still a terrifying man, but I'm yours if you'll have me.
I looked at the diamond ring, then at the ruby still on my finger, then at Dante's face. This dangerous, powerful, surprisingly vulnerable man who'd saved me and respected me and never once made me feel like I owed him anything more than I chose to give. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Dante slipped the diamond ring onto my finger beside the ruby, past and future together, and kissed me with a fierceness that promised forever. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. The ruby stays, because that's where we started, but the diamond is what we're building. Both rings? Both rings. Let them wonder what it means. Dante smiled, dangerous and devoted. Let everyone know that Anya Moretti wears the symbols of both contract and choice, power and love. Let them know you chose this, chose me. Always, I whispered.
6 months later, I walked back into the St. Regis ballroom on Dante's arm, wearing a dress that cost more than my old apartment and both rings on my finger, ruby and diamond, past and future. The same charity gala, the same crowd, but this time I wasn't the woman being destroyed. I was the woman who'd risen from those ashes wearing a mafia boss's rings and my own hard-won power. "Mrs. Moretti," the host greeted us, his respect genuine this time. "Welcome back." We moved through the ballroom like we'd owned it, because, in many ways, we did. Dante's reputation combined with my restored professional standing created a force that demanded acknowledgement. By the end of the cocktail hour, I'd been approached by 3 companies wanting to hire me as a consultant. 2 board positions had been subtly offered, and the chairwoman of the charity had personally apologized for not intervening during Julian's spectacle. "They're afraid of you now," Dante murmured in my ear as we danced. "Good." "They're afraid of us," I corrected. "There's a difference." He smiled, spinning me in a move that made my dress flare dramatically. Around us, people watched, some with envy, others with respect, all of them wondering how the woman Julian Hale had publicly bankrupted had become Mrs. Dante Moretti. "Do you regret it?" Dante asked quietly. "Tying yourself to someone like me?" I looked up at him, this dangerous man who'd given me back my life, then offered me his heart. I regret wasting 3 years on a man who saw me as property. I don't regret finding one who sees me as a partner. "Partner," Dante repeated, testing the word. "I like that." "Good, because I reorganized your entire Tribeca holdings last week, and you're going to like the profit margins significantly less." He laughed, rich and real and rare, brutal and beautiful. "I'm a lucky man." "Yes, you are." Later, as we stood at those same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Desperate, humiliated, convinced she'd lost everything. I'd accepted a dangerous man's ring out of survival instinct, expecting a transaction. Instead, I'd found a partnership built on respect, protection, and the kind of love that doesn't flinch from darkness. Dante's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" "That Julian tried to destroy me in this room, but instead he gave me the push I needed to find something real." "Should I send him a thank you note?" "He's still in London, right?" "Last I checked. Miserable, from what I hear. Turns out no one wants to work with a man known for betraying his fiancée." Dante pressed a kiss to my temple. "Karma is a bitch." "So am I, apparently." "Mrs. Moretti, was that a threat?" I turned in his arms, both rings catching the light. "A promise, to myself, to you. I'm never going to be that helpless woman again, and anyone who tries to make me will deal with both of us." "Terrifying," Dante said, but his eyes were full of pride. "Good.
I kissed him, tasting wine and promises and the future we'd built from ruins. Around us, the gala continued, Manhattan's elite circulating with champagne and carefully maintained appearances. But in our corner, by the windows, we existed in our own world. A world where debt had transformed into devotion, where protection had evolved into partnership, where a mafia boss's ring had become a symbol not of possession but of choice. Julian had tried to destroy me in this room. Instead, he'd led me straight to the one man dangerous enough to protect me, wise enough to respect me, and brave enough to love me exactly as I was. Sharp edges, fierce pride, and all. Some debts were worth paying. Some rings were worth wearing forever. And some men, the dangerous, honest, ruthlessly protective ones, were worth risking everything for. I'd gambled on Dante Moretti in my darkest moment, and I'd won everything.